Let's talk Dominic Thiem. I've talked about him a little bit on TC Live this week. Obviously, post U.S. Open 2020 win, which was a huge win. I don't think I think we always thought the French Open was going to be the one. You know, he was the guy like, oh, when Rafa stops, this is going to be his tournament. And he just didn't quite get there. Obviously, I can relate to trying to have to go through one of the greats' best services to try to get the title that you want. The 2020 U.S. Open, he broke through. I would like to talk about what led up to that as opposed to what's happened since. The what's happened since part of it is very simple. The next year, he caught a stinger, wrist injury. He never recovered. He was not able to create any sort of speed on his forehand where he used to play bully ball and go after it, the serve and the forehand, to a lesser extent the backhand, were just missing. And what happens when you have to lay off of a forehand? I went from being able to hit a forehand hard to shoulder injury, and then all of a sudden I hit this little spinny Magoo thing that I had to learn to, dance with. Also, and what that does is it drives traffic, and people are, instead of Dominic Thiem playing aggressively on the backhand side, hitting that magical one-hander with speed, all of a sudden he's having to play defense on it because he can't get the speed on his forehand, and that's what we saw for the last 4 years. And his level of professionalism, phenomenal. His attitude, always great. Going from someone who's 3 in the world, having won a slam, to fighting to be in the top 100, but also always having respect for your opponent, not showing them up, showing up day to day, still putting in the hard yards. I think that the 4 years since the U.S. Open has showed me more great things about his character and his professionalism than maybe I knew before or took for granted before. But to work and work and work and work and work and not be able to break through against Rafa on clay or, at a U.S. Open, and then to get that moment and take your chance. And, the U.S. Open final was probably the ugliest final that's ever been played in the finals of a slam. But W, right? You work and work and work. He's played better matches at French Open finals that he's lost. But he got to the top of the mountain. Unfortunate what happened in the fallout, but I respect the work, the process, the way that he went about it. I think he's like 6'1" and would consistently bully people around the court. Maybe he's 2, but not one of these giants. Guy could just create speed. He could put a hurt on the ball. Just post wrist injury, it just wasn't the same. What am I missing here, John?
That's very well said. Keep that U.S. Open final 0 crowd, which may have had an impact on the appeal. But no, I agree. 3 things real quick. 2012 French Open. There is a kid from Austria who's a practice partner of Ernest Gulbis. They're practicing right outside the Tennis Channel compound, and someone says, keep an eye on this kid. He's a good player, and he works like an animal. Ernest Gulbis gets eliminated. You know who stays at Roland Garros and keeps playing every single day, 3-hour practices on that same court? Dominic Thiem. Absolute animal of a worker. I don't know if he ever got enough credit for that. 16 and 19 against the big 3. Remember the 2-day takedown of Novak at the French Open? I mean, apart from winning that major, he accomplished an awful lot during a very rich time for men's tennis. Whoopi Goldberg notwithstanding. You ever see, if you want to have a fun little YouTube digression, Whoopi Goldberg, Dominic Thiem. Don't no one know who you are, Dominic Thiem? It's a great riff. Whoopi Goldberg notwithstanding, nobody did not like this guy. It's very easy to say, oh, so-and-so's a good guy. I mean, literally the fondness that he was able to generate. I mean, this is somebody who was liked by his peers, liked by the media. Even he'd have these coaching breakups, and even those later they would say what a good guy he was. This is someone who really acquitted himself well. And I like what you say, too. You can reveal yourself in triumph. You can reveal yourself in adversity. He did not win another title of any size after winning that first major, right? It's his fourth major final. Finally wins it. You think, oh, okay, the keg has been tapped, and now here we're going to start really. He's 26 years old. He's in the prime of his career. Finally won a major. The 3 guys that kept thwarting him are older. He didn't win a single tournament, and he was not bitter. He kept showing up at these events. He was congenial when you'd run into him. He did some work for Tennis Channel. lovely guy. It's not a dissimilar conversation to what we have about Muguruza a few weeks ago, right? I mean, maybe they didn't max out their talent. Maybe sort of they had some physical setbacks, some mental setbacks. It wasn't a straight line of a career, but a real credit to the sport. There will be, he'll be missed. You wish him well, and he won a major. So all things told, successful career.
Producer Mike.
So a guy like this who's loved by everyone, clearly comes from a tennis family, has tennis coaching in his blood. What's next for him? Only 30 years old. Do you think he sticks around the tour and picks up coaching, or
who knows? It's a weird thing, and it's hard to predict. Like in a weird way, I see a lot of the guys who absolutely hated playing and would like tank matches. And I got in trouble for saying this on Twitter. Another controversial thing I said is that I'm always surprised at the coaching boxes being guys that like tanked their way through decades. And didn't really want to be out there, always seem to end up back in the coaching box. I don't know is the question. We'll see how good he is on TV. Obviously, if he is okay, then he's going to have a job for many, many years, especially probably somewhere in Europe. Super respected. Seems to be a level-headed, rational person. So if you're looking for former players to step into leadership positions, it seems like he was good enough to understand what the top of the mountain looks like, but also, wasn't number one in the world or wasn't someone that dominated the tour who lost all sense of reality for what was going on behind the scenes. So I hope good things, but you never know. I feel like, I feel like sometimes I'm the only person that's not instantly back out on the road doing something. So it'll be interesting. It seems like most people kind of gravitate towards getting back out there. But we'll see. Do you have any sort of opinion on that, JW? What's next for him?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. He's from a tennis family. I know his family had worked with this kid Offner, this Austrian player. I think coaching is realistic. I'm not sure. I mean, that wrist injury. We talked about hips last week. I'm not sure. He's relatively young to be retiring. I'm not sure I would predict a comeback necessarily. I'm not sure there's an unretirement in his future. But this is someone who loved tennis. Again, the work ethic, the background, I think you're probably right. Whether it's coaching or commentating, he'll probably stick around. It's probably conversation for another point. It's really interesting to try and predict which players are going to somehow reemerge in tennis and which you'll never see again. And there's very little predictability to it. Some players who you think are all too happy to get out of there and start career 2.0, 18 months later, you see them in the suites or trying to sort of grovel for a coaching job. And then there are other players who love tennis. They were totally into it. Justine Hen. I mean, there are some players, Martina Hingis, love tennis. Tennis IQ is always sort of part of the scene. You don't really see her much. So it's very little predictability to what players return in some capacity and what don't.
Yeah, one thing I wasn't surprised about this week, and one thing I was, Dominic Thiem announcing his retirement. He had said, given us a preview in January, he said something along the lines of, if I'm still 100 by the end of the year, I don't really have interest in doing this at 100 in the world, which I understand. And now he's 120 or 117, whatever it is. So trending the wrong way, kind of called his shot. But one thing I was surprised at was the multiple Whoopi Goldberg references during the breakdown of Dominic Thiem's retirement. So thank you for that. John Wertheim,